Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for this episode, looking ahead to this weekend's Premier League slate, European matches and beyond, are Anthony DeBundo and BJ Cunningham. This week, we've got a lot to get to. We'll start with the title race matches right off the jump. We'll start with Arsenal. BJ, we'll start with your Gunners, coming off a huge weekend for them in the Premier League, at least. With United drawing Liverpool. So Arsenal now at the top of the table. Still not the favorites to win. That belongs to City, but it's essentially like a coin flip, three-way coin flip at this point. The Gunners are minus 350. They've got the trickiest matchup according to the odds this weekend, and that's pretty crazy. All three teams in the title race are at home, and minus 350 on the three-way line is the makes them the smallest favorite among the three. They're hosting Aston Villa, who are 9-1. The draw here is plus 475. What do you think about your Gunners? Are you a little concerned after the quick turnaround and a pretty wonky performance against Bayern Munich in the Champions League?
I mean, you can call it wonky if you want to, and yeah, it wasn't Arsenal's best performance of the year, but I wouldn't say it was a terrible performance. You know, they were still fine. They controlled the match for a majority of it. So I'm not going to freak out and just say, oh my gosh, the sky is falling like DeBundo's going to do here in just a little bit. But yeah, I think this is actually a pretty good matchup here for Arsenal. You know, the previous meeting was interesting because Aston Villa scored first and they just kind of sat in their defensive block and kind of held Arsenal out. But Arsenal created close to 2 expected goals in that match. I expect Arsenal to control this match as well. You know, if Villa's going to play that high line, they definitely have Arsenal. I know they're a slow build-up type team, but they definitely have the runners to get in behind and cause a lot of problems for Aston Villa. So I'm generally pretty close to where the market is here. So it's a pass for me. But yeah, with Villa not having their best ball stopper in the middle of the pitch, you know, John McGinn will be back for this one as he was for the last one. But yeah, I think Villa is obviously a team that's much worse away from home than they are. They're much better at home versus on the road. So this is not the best of matchups for them. But again, I think the market's pretty close or to where it should be. So I'm passing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think Arsenal played well against Bayern. I thought Bayern exposed transition defense weaknesses we hadn't really seen from Arsenal much in the league. It's now 3 straight performances in the Champions League where they were not really better than their opponent over the full 90 minutes. And that has some interesting knock-on effects. I think we could talk about that on Monday's episode as Arsenal tries to grind their way through this Champions League quarter against Bayern. But as far as this league matchup goes, you know, I think Arsenal has benefited from the league being so open this year. And as a result of that, they get a matchup against a Villa defense that has just completely crumbled in the last few months. So since January 30th, specifically, Villa have allowed 2.03 XG per 90 minutes. So on average, about 2.03, 2 goals per match of chances. And they've conceded at least 1.5 expected goals in 11 straight. And now they don't have Douglas Luiz. And we saw, even when playing like a Wolves team that was really shorthanded, even when playing Luton Town, those teams were able, Brentford from 2-0 down last weekend, consistently create big chances in behind this defense. And I just don't really think it's built to play against an Arsenal team who will have the passing range to exploit that in behind. Arsenal have given up just 9.8 XG in their 15 home league matches. That's less than 2/3 of a goal per match by XG. It's pretty good. Again, it hasn't translated into Europe, which is interesting. But either way, like Villa's defensive metrics, we talked about this last week on the show, continue to crater. And other than that Wolves match, they won 2-0 on the back of, have a couple good finishes and Villa and Wolves being really shorthanded and Villa being at home. Other than that, like what have we seen from this Villa team that suggests they can stay within a goal and a half of Arsenal? Not a ton for me. So I'm laying it here with Arsenal minus 1.5, minus 130. You look at the league results for Villa. They had the 3-2 win against Luton Town where they, scored late to hold on, lose 4-0 to Spurs, 1-1 draw with West Ham. They were outplayed. The Wolves win at home, very shorthanded, and then throttled at City and scored late to tie Brentford. in a game where, Brentford scored 3 times in a half. So it's just like, do we trust this defense at all? I don't. So I think when Arsenal plays teams who are good defensively, that can kind of turn it into a bit of a rock fight, to quote Lieboff, that's when they start to struggle. When Arsenal plays these poor defensive teams that are going to allow chances, it's just the table gets tilted so far in the other direction. And much like I laid City against Villa, I'm going to lay Arsenal here -1.5 as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think that this one feels like a game you just want to play into Arsenal scoring and getting margin. So I don't see any problem there. Let's talk about City and Luton next. City's laying -1,000. Luton Town +1,800, and the draw here is 10-1. We've had this discussion, worth bringing up again. It's crazy that these odds are as short as they are on these teams against the title contenders still. Like we keep bringing up the Brentford example. Brentford was a bigger underdog than this Luton Town team against City when we backed them right before the World Cup as part of our 200-1 Underdog Parlay that we pat ourselves on the back for hitting once an episode. It's required by the sponsors, so we still do it. But I do think it's an important point to bring up. Like, why isn't Luton Town 25-1 here? It's frustrating. But nothing for me here. I think that you can, if you wanted to bet like City to score 4+, whatever, you can. I know Luton Town's been a little bit better defensively the past couple games, but I mean, I don't see anything kind of nefarious going on with this game. So either pass or just City alts for me here, BJ.
Yeah, I like Luton Town to score here at +105.
Right.
It is fun. And you know what else is fun is this Luton Town offense. Yeah, their defense sucks. Yeah, they could give up 5, 6, 7 goals in this match, but they have only gone scoreless in 5 Premier League matches this season. And 4 of them were before the middle of November. So the Arsenal match is really the only match where they have gone scoreless, essentially over the last 3 or 4 months. And even since the beginning of February, they're averaging 1.6 expected goals per 90 minutes. And I want to talk about City's defense for a little bit, because I think that they're bad, quite frankly, compared to what people think they are. What happened against Real Madrid, and what's been happening a lot with Manchester City, is that since there's no longer a guy like Gundogan there, who is a box-crashing midfielder, Rodri had to have that role. And when teams play low defensive blocks on them, they push those midfielders up farther and farther up the pitch. So when they lose the ball, oftentimes what happens is they get into 3v3 situations. And I can't remember who put it on Twitter, but, yes, Real Madrid has their flaws, but if you're getting a 3v3 transition break against Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, and Bellingham, you're screwed. I know Luton Town doesn't have those guys, but they played Manchester City in the FA Cup on February 27th. And yeah, Erling Haaland scored 5 goals, and Kevin De Bruyne had 7 billion assists in that match. But you know what else happened? Luton Town created 2.5 expected goals. They had 9 shots inside of City's penalty area. And what's been happening with City is they just get beat time and time in transition because, again, they're going 3v3 and they're not as good at counter-pressing as they have been in years past. So we can go through all those stats, but they've been very average in that. So, and also, City's been pretty average at defending set pieces. So I think Luton Town definitely has a path to score here. They did it in the previous meeting. I mean, 2.5 expected goals is not nothing. I don't care if this match is out of play. I think they're definitely live to score here, and I don't think they should be plus money. So I like them to score at +105. And for those asking, it's like, why don't you just take both teams to score, which is at, +110, +105. I know Luton Town's defense has been bad, but I generally think there's better than a 2% chance. I generally think that there is greater than a 2% chance that City doesn't score here. So I'd rather just take Luton Town to score at +105.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good second half under look. Kind of see how the game's going, look to play a live under, because we saw this with Arsenal, who played a very rotated team. To BJ's point, that was the first match only match in 20 that Luton hadn't scored, was that Arsenal away match. And they created next to nothing in that match. And I think they'll get a little more against City, but question is just like City's incentive to run it up. And I know we're having goal difference conversations now because it is just 1 point. It separates Arsenal, City, and Liverpool. And City has the worst of the goal difference situation. But this match in the middle of this Real Madrid tie probably not where City's going to look to run it up, especially with De Bruyne missing the Wednesday match with his illness. Haaland playing a ton of minutes in the last week. We saw City not even play Haaland against Villa. They're trying to manage his minutes. And so this is a match to me where, like, if City gets up, 2-0 first half, they're just going to shut it down and keep the ball as best as possible. Once they're up 2 goals, I think this game dies. So I'm going to wait for that moment to live bet the under and think that, City just kind of gets in, gets out, gets their win, moves on here. It's funny because the way that the schedule lines up, there's a lot of weekends where City, Arsenal, and Liverpool are all at home or all on the road. So last weekend we saw like City go down to Palace. We saw Liverpool, play that chaotic thriller with United away from home. This feels like a routine hold serve weekend for all three. And then next weekend, I believe all three are on the road again. So things get more interesting as we kind of go through the ebbs and flows of the next 6 weeks, looking at the schedule and like who's going to have the edge here for the final 6 matches. One more note just too on Villa Arsenal. We talk about it being in the middle of a cup tie for Arsenal, but Villa's got Lille on Thursday and they're on a shorter turnaround and on the road. So, Villa has to play Thursday, Sunday. Arsenal plays Tuesday, Sunday. It's a pretty big advantage for Arsenal in terms of rest and depth too. So
Jurgen Klopp will certainly be writing to the Premier League offices about that. Not fair.
It's not fair. It's not fair, Michael, that they couldn't finish top 4 last year. It's just not fair.
Liverpool up next. They are minus 450 at hosting Crystal Palace, who are 10-1. The draw here is 6-1. I do like Palace in one way or another here. I know that it's not been particularly encouraging under new manager Oliver Glasner, but I don't know. I'm not too fussed about a 4-2 defeat to City in a match that I handicapped pretty terribly. I thought that was going to be a bet the under 1.5 or City to win 1-0 for many of the same reasons that Anthony was just talking about in the City Luton Town match. But I do think that Palace can frustrate Liverpool here enough, and I'm going to zero in on a Liverpool trend that has been apparent for the whole year here, which is that they're like just an absolute dynamite second half team. We talked about this a little bit before their match with Sheffield United on over the midweek. So I like Palace on the first half money line at 7-1, or you can play Palace, score first if you want. Sheffield United should have been up 1-0 in that game. We talked about betting Sheffield to score first or to bet Liverpool to win from behind, and 30 seconds in, Sheffield United had a grade A++ chance to go ahead. And then right off the ensuing corner after that one didn't go in, they had another good look. So a little bit unlucky there. And that's just something we've seen out of Liverpool a bit this season. Over the first half this entire season, they've won 11 of the first halves, but that means that, they played 31 matches. So they're either drawing or losing more often than not at halftime. 5 times they've gone into the break behind. Their goal differential is only +9, which is still good, but compared to Arsenal and City or even Villa, it's not even close to the top of the league. So I don't know. I think Palace has a decent chance to do what a bunch of teams are and give Liverpool a little bit of like a slap in the face right out of the gate. So I'm going to play that. It's 7-1, the first half money line on Palace, another team that's been a bogey team for quite a bit of these title contenders over the years. So why not lean into that here, Anthony?
Yep. Well, my rule about Anfield that I'm holding for at least another couple weeks. So I'm not going to break that for this Palace team. A couple of nice counters for them, like a perfectly well functioning 1-2 combination that got Mateta in behind for the first goal. Second goal, it was 4-1. The game was long decided. The definition of a consolation goal. If you want to look at, Palace to score here, I do think they're certainly live to do it. But there's nothing for me in this Palace team that suggests that they can withstand the pressure they're going to be under constantly at Anfield in this match. And, there's been a lot of hand-wringing about Liverpool missing a lot of chances, and they have. the last few weeks, like they've run pretty cold in terms of finishing versus chances. Even the Sheffield match, there was a couple late moments where they could have got, an extra goal, even got a fifth, kind of thing. So I don't really want to, go into the fire here with Liverpool. Liverpool is the team that has the easiest of the Champions League / Europa League, but it is still a match on Thursday against Atalanta. And I think how much they're willing to run it up will be dependent upon how that first leg goes. So also in a bit of a period where I want to kind of wait and see, what are we going to see from Liverpool on Thursday against Atalanta? How aggressive does Klopp go in that competition? And what might the team look like on Sunday? Because it is notable that Diego Jota and Trent Alexander-Arnold both returned to training this week. So I doubt they play, like start on Sunday, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. But most importantly, like it gives them minutes to the point where, let's say, Liverpool is up a goal or even two, and they want to try to get ready for the weekend or get ready for the midweek and kind of rest, Salah, Nunez, who play a lot of minutes lately. Instead of going to like not as good players, they're going to bring on Jota and Trent. That's a big difference between that and, bring on even a Cody Gakpo off the bench, just in the quality of minutes you're getting and the attacking firepower that Trent has on his foot at all times. And Jota's been really efficient as a goal scorer anytime he's played for Liverpool. So I just think that, with Liverpool having a chance to catch Arsenal in goal difference and put a dent in it here and then bringing in quality players off the bench, it's not a spot where I want to back Palace.
No, I generally think that, I agree with Anthony. This is not really the spot where I want to fade Liverpool. Still trying to kind of figure out this Palace team under Glasner and not really a spot that I really want to back them, especially with Liverpool needing to make up that goal difference.
Okay. So that's the title race. Those three matches. Just a quick big picture view. Arsenal is ahead of Liverpool on goal difference right now by 9 goals. They're both at 71 points. City is on 70, two goals behind Liverpool and 11 behind Arsenal going into match week 32 for all of them. All right, on to the rest of the board. We'll do Newcastle at home hosting Spurs next. The Magpies plus 170. Spurs traveling at plus 130, and the draw here is 3-1. This one I feel like will end up starting as one game and devolving into something else entirely as it moves on. I feel like both of these teams have a tendency to engage in those kind of matches. So, what do you think here, Anthony? Spurs and Newcastle in I think a pretty tricky contest for Spurs as they look to hold on to that fourth spot in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, with Arsenal and City not being totally assured, if both were to lose in the Champions League, then all of a sudden, especially with, Bayern beating Arsenal and then potentially Leverkusen beating West Ham, and then you could see Dortmund go through. It wouldn't. I mean, I don't think they're going to, but they could. All of a sudden, that fifth place, becomes a little more teetering right now because it's very clearly a 2-team race for 4th and 5th, with West Ham and United not having really much of a chance to catch either. And so, Spurs and Villa are kind of in a comfy spot here, but Newcastle, you're starting to finally see the defense take a step forward again. Like they couldn't have been as bad as they were. And they have gotten a little healthier. They've been playing fewer matches now. I think they've come out of the malaise they were in for 3 straight months where they couldn't stop anything. They weren't particularly good against Fulham, but they did hold Fulham to about 1 expected goal, which has been an improvement. If you look just across the board at their defensive metrics now since February 1st, they had that period, remember, from December through really February into March where they were giving up over 2 XG per match. Now it's back down around 1.5. So it's obviously nowhere near the level they were last year. I don't think they'll ever get to that level with the current personnel, but it has improved. And, Joe Willock being back has helped them defensively in the midfield, even with Joe Linton going out. Like they haven't been as vulnerable to the transitions. And also it's a way of playing where, we're vulnerable on the break. If you hit a bunch of high quality looks on us and you string together a ton of passes, you can break us open easily. But naturally, that style of defending is going to leave you at the mercy of like, oh, what if that team just isn't at it that day and doesn't put together that really big chance? Like you were vulnerable to give it up, but they didn't take it, kind of thing. And I think we've seen a little bit of that with Newcastle as well. That's helped their defense. Now, Willock did pick up an injury, of course, and he is doubtful after the picking it up last week. So he is in doubt here. Trippier still not going to be back yet. So they are still dealing with some injuries, but it's clear that the attack remains one of the best, and facing this Tottenham defense at home as a true like underdog now with the line moving towards Spurs in the last couple of days, I don't really agree. I have this as a dead pick 'em. I make Newcastle minus 101 on the draw no bet line. So I took some plus 105. There's just going to be some plus 110s in the market, I'd imagine. I'm good with that. I just don't really trust Tottenham's defense away from home, because even against Forest last week at home, Forest got over 1.5 XG. Wood missed that big header just off the corner of the post to make that 2-1 Forest in a game that, Tottenham gets a screamer from Van de Ven. But it didn't feel like they, deserved that cover. And they ran, of course it's classic Tottenham, but they, created 1.7 XG to give up 1.6, 131. Good for them. They move on. Top 5 is pretty safe now, but they still have flaws. And I think Newcastle is starting to trend up and be a real buy low here, given that their form has turned. The attacks remained great and the defense just isn't quite as leaky as it was.
Yeah, I agree. The Newcastle's defense has obviously improved a little bit, but they are dealing with a lot of injuries. Botman being out, Lascelles being out for a long period of time, like you mentioned, Trippier. So instead, I like Newcastle team total over 1.5 at minus 120. Since the match against Aston Villa, where they changed how they're playing to when they went more aggressive, when they started man marking instead of doing their normal hybrid pressing and having their midfielders cover a lot of ground, they're averaged 1.9 expected goals per 90 minutes. And a lot of that has to do not only with the structure of playing more aggressive, but Ishak being healthy, Harvey Barnes getting back in the lineup, Anthony Gordon still being there. I'd assume you'd see a front three of Anthony Gordon, Ishak, and Barnes, which are 3 fantastic goal-scoring options. Whereas previously, yes, Anthony Gordon started on the left. Almiron is much better as a ball carrier and a creator than actual goal-scoring threat. So those 3 guys, especially in a match that's probably going to be very transitional, with Newcastle looking to play on the break here. I mean, we say it all the time with Tottenham, but like Van de Ven and Vicario's shot stopping is the only thing that holds them up from just getting ripped apart transitionally, right? Because they play so aggressively, because they play that high line. I know both of them are there and available, but this is still a really good attack that you have to deal with. And one more thing is that Newcastle, obviously since they haven't, maybe had the offensive prowess that they had last year, they're still a really, really good set piece team. 11 goals off of set pieces, top 5 in XG per set piece. That is an area where Tottenham has struggled a little bit this season. So I don't really want any part of this Newcastle defense. I know they have improved, but with all those injuries, I would just rather back their team total over 1.5 at minus 120.
Yeah, so they moved Burn in at center back, and I just kind of think he's better than Lascelles. Like, I know he's not naturally a center back, and they were playing Lascelles there, but I kind of think Burn's just better. And, they put Lewis Hall, the youngster, in at left back, and he looked pretty solid because now you have Trippier and Livramento out. The one angle I think where Tottenham has a clear edge is going to be Werner against Emil Kraft, the right back they've been playing there. So, I think Spurs will still probably score in this match. But for me, they're a favorite on the road, and I have this as true coin flip. Even if you say, hey, like, let's just take the whole season and not try to be like narrative-y and get into the details. Over the course of the entire season, the two teams have very comparable underlying numbers. It's just that Spurs have conceded 7 fewer goals because of their goalie. They've scored the same number of goals. Basically, they've had the same amount of XG within, a goal or two. So where's been the true difference in these two teams? Spurs have run better in close games with like late stuff, and Tottenham has better goalie.
Okay, let's talk about Brentford and Sheffield United. Relegation 6-pointer here. As Sheffield United is trying to get out of the foot of the table. I mean, we know that they're down, but regardless, I'm still selling it as a relegation is a relegation 6-pointer with Brentford on 29 points, only 4 ahead of Luton Town. Sheffield United on 16, propping up the entire thing. Brentford's at home here. They're minus 225, and Sheffield United's traveling at 6-1. Draws plus 350. I actually don't mind Sheffield United. BJ, I know you're going to go the other way here, but I think that there have been just marginal improvements from this team under Chris Wilder, and it's not just because they're getting the results. Like, the underlying numbers are getting better. They actually have some players up top who can finish. I think that the back line has like at least some like competent. What would you call? I guess you'd call them like quadruple A players in baseball terms, like guys who can. Who are like kind of like quasi championship Premier League caliber players, top of the championship, and then bottom of the Premier League caliber players. Like, you know, Mason Holgate is on Sheffield United in the back line. Like, these guys can at least do a job. And I don't trust Brentford at this kind of price, even at home, with the way that their season's going. I know that the underlying metrics have suggested all season they should be better than this, but as we've talked about a little bit, they've gotten worse. So I think that we're looking at a situation where there's some value on the Blades to at least make a go of things here. And it's definitely not a situation where I'd want to lay it with Brentford, but you're going to go the other way here.
Yeah. I just, if we're just looking at pure underlying numbers for the entire season, Brentford has, we've been through it many times about how unlucky they've been. And again, yeah, I'm not going to lay Brentford minus 1.5 here. I think that's a crazy thing to do. But parlaying them with another big favorite, someone like Arsenal, can get you to about minus 120. And if you look at how this, Sheffield United, very interesting performance against Chelsea. And then obviously against Liverpool as well. Like you said, yes, they have been improving. But with the amount of attackers that Brentford have, just with the basically where Sheffield has struggled in every single area, from defending set pieces to defending crosses to all the things that Brentford really does well. Unless they sit in a low block and try to keep Brentford out for a full 90 minutes, I generally think Brentford actually is undervalued. I actually projected Brentford closer to minus 270, just because of, the underlying numbers. I mean, Brentford's, just a hair under negative expected goal differential for the season, and Sheffield is one of the worst. So I know there have been improvements, and this is not, particularly the best spot, but with how bad and vulnerable Sheffield's defense has been, I mean, trying to buy low on Brentford, I think, is always a good thing to do. And I think parlaying them with someone like Arsenal, I think has decent value.
I'm going to look at under 3 for a long time. And I'm going to think about it. Sheffield defensively have had so many of these like embarrassing performances that it's hard to trust them to do much of anything, especially with how bad they've been on set piece defense. It's been a really alarming trend, especially going up against Brentford, who's consistently elite there. But this total is like pretty close to 325, and I don't project value in it from a numbers perspective, but I think from a stylistic matchup, I can just see Sheffield United coming in, parking the bus, making life difficult for Brentford to find space, and then it just kind of gets into like an ugly matchup. And we have seen this from Brentford in the past. Now they handled Luton in a similar spot, but again, Luton's more aggressive than I think Sheffield will be in this matchup. But then again, there's also the thing of like, if you're Sheffield, like a draw is not really good enough. Like you're trying to pull Brentford down into this mess, and you're sitting there 9 points from safety. I mean, is a draw good? I don't even know. So that's the only thing that scares me about it. But certainly 3.25 is too high. So that for me would be the play, if anything.
On to Burnley and Brighton. I've got nothing here. Burnley's plus 240. Brighton is even money. The draw is sitting at a price at plus 280 at Bet365. Anthony, you're the only one with anything here. What do you got?
Brighton Brentford under 3. Going to continue the trend of the Brighton unders. They continue to be very feeble in attack right now. And if you look at Burnley's numbers, first half of the season, their pass per defensive action versus the second half of the season, it's been a noticeable difference in how much they're pressing. And as a result of their lower pressing numbers, I just think there's going to be very little space for Brighton to operate in on the road to get margin here and whatnot. So I think as a result of that, Burnley, less confrontations in the opposition half as a defense, less possession in their own half as like a per game basis, like amount of touches they have in their own half is down. So they're doing less of the playing out from the back, because if you try that against Brighton, you introduce a lot of, they just have more technically gifted players and they're going to pick you off. And then when Brighton gets the high turnovers, they're still a very functioning attack. But without them, we have just constantly seen this Brighton team now, not even just the Arsenal match last week, but prior to that against Forest, against Brentford, against these teams who are going to sit a little bit deeper and bring, allow pressure, allow ball possession in their own half. You're just not going to see Brighton break them down at the same level that we have in the past. And I think it really just comes down to, who's not playing and who's not available for Brighton, and just how that's kind of taken its toll. And they haven't had the same 11, I think, enough this year. They've kind of over-rotated / overextended themselves because of injury. And we're seeing a Brighton team now that has been 14th in XG created since February 1st. So you just look at like the last 2 months, it's been pretty mediocre from them going forward. And then we talked about their defense, which I thought played pretty well against Arsenal overall. Like the penalty was kind of soft, but as a whole, I didn't think Arsenal created a ton of huge chances until after Brighton really had to start opening it up in like the last 25 minutes. And you saw Arsenal get a couple chances on the break there. But the first 45 to me didn't feel like Arsenal had much. And I think that's a testament to just how Brighton's improved defensively. And as a result, 3 is high. I think this game it just screams 1-1 to me. But, the teams that have ambushed Brighton and had success and beat them when Brighton's been away from home profile very differently statistically than this current version of Burnley. They profile much closer. Burnley now profiles much closer to Forest and Brentford, teams who just kind of sat off and held Brighton under 1 XG or right around 1. And I do think Brighton scores in this match. But 3, flat 3 is high. So I like the under.
Okay.
Under's back a little bit, just a little. The last 15 minutes of every 10 a.m. slate, though, just chaos. Like sometimes I don't even have to watch the games. I'll just pull up the flash score for the last 15 minutes and then just see the board light up. Goal.
Big chance.
And then I get the goal. I'll have the goal zone on. So I wait a couple minutes and I see the goals, because it's just there's so much happening in all of the games at once. Even the games last week that were 0-0 at half. Like Newcastle, Fulham, there was a goal, a VAR, and 2 posts in the last 15 minutes. The Luton Bournemouth game had 2 goals in the last 10 minutes. I'm trying to think of who else played, but there was a ton of just crazy back and forth that happens in the last 15 minutes of every game now. It's kind of exciting. Nobody can kill off a game anymore. It's a lost art.
All right. Let's get to Forest and Wolves next. But before we do that, a reminder that Wondergoal is presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than anyone else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boosts and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or North Carolina, or 18 and older in Kentucky. If you or anyone you know have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. Okay, on to Forest and Wolves here. Forest is a home favorite, plus 115 on the 3-way line. Wolves coming back, plus 240. And the draw also at plus 240. Been a kind of a lull here for Wolves over the past couple of weeks after a really just impressive first half of the season, coming off of a 2-1 loss to West Ham. Before that, a draw, 1-1 draw to Burnley, and a 2-0 defeat to Villa. Meanwhile, Forest, I think, are still on the right path here. I know that they're dealing with 4-point deduction, putting them at the in a precarious position, but I think we're all in agreement here that Forest are trending up, right? Like, Anthony, is this price still playable for the tricky trees?
So not anymore. I mean, this opened plus 140, and I liked it, but now it's way down at plus 120, and it doesn't seem like a huge difference, but it's like 5%. It doesn't matter. So I'm now in line with the market. I have Forest rated right about even with this current version of Wolves. You throw in home field, I have them right around plus 115. So if it gets back up to like plus 130, I'll hop in, but we're down at like plus 120, best number available. Consensus market is like 115. So no value in the number for me anymore. But yeah, I mean, this Wolves team, we talked about it. Like, they had a really good run of transition attacks leading to goals for a while when they had their best guys available. And they are not rushing Cunha back. Credit to Gary O'Neill for not rushing players back, because he knows the reality. If you do that, they're more likely to just get hurt again and miss more time. And Wolves are in a very safe position in terms of like league form. Like, they're not like getting relegated, so it's not worth rushing guys back. And so Cunha may play now. It's been another week since he was held out last week, but Neto and Hwang, nope. So, their defense is pretty mediocre, and now they don't have the attacking quality to make up for it.
Yep.
Hwang is listed as 50-50 here. Maybe another 5 to go is set on March 16th. So maybe this weekend, but it doesn't sound like it based on the reports. So probably another week for Hwang, and Neto's till May. So
yeah, I don't think there's a bad look at the draw either. I don't, just the way the Forest games have been going, and like you said, the Wolves attack not being one that you think would be able to get, put 2 or 3 past any defense right now. So we've seen a few tight matches from Forest before the back-to-back 3-1s, the one win against Fulham, and then the defeat to Spurs. But that's probably where I'd be leaning, BJ, but not all that interested.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same vein. Premier League matches don't go under, and this one will probably lose in the 97th minute with a penalty. But I do like under 2.5 goals, which is at plus money right now. Like Anthony mentioned, Hwang 50-50 coming back. Most likely won't play, maybe on the bench, so around there. But even if Cunha plays, the problem is like who's feeding him the ball, right? Because Neto, Hwang were those guys that were actually feeding them into the penalty area. And Sarabia has been good because of, in terms of actually getting the ball in the penalty area, because of all the absences of everybody else. But if that's your only guy, and then after that it's Semedo, you're relying on essentially only playing in transition against a team that may just hand you the ball. Like, this might be I know Nottingham Forest is at home, but there might be a case where Nottingham Forest says, here, Wolves, you can have the ball. Like, to try to break us down, and we'll be the ones to play in transition. So, the previous meeting between these two was right before Steve Cooper got fired. And it was a pretty dead game. There were 2 huge chances, which kind of inflated the XG up to about 2.5. But other than that, there really weren't any high quality chances. So I'm only projecting about 2.3 goals for this. Generally when you have 2 teams that like to play in transition, somebody's got to hold a majority of the possession, and somebody's going to try to force the other one to break the other one down. It remains to be seen who that's going to be in this match. And even if it is Nottingham Forest with the ones in the ball, I don't think they're that great in terms of actually possessing it and actually breaking down a low block. They haven't been in that scenario really at all this season. So I do like under 2.5 goals and anything plus money. Obviously, the worry here for Nottingham Forest is how bad they are defending set pieces. That's always going to be a worry. But again, I think this total is a little inflated with Wolves not having anybody available, and 2 teams that just generally want to play low blocks and play in transition.
Okay. This is a great 3-way line. Maybe my favorite of the entire season. Bournemouth, plus 137 at home to Manchester United, who are plus 170. Not only is it funny that United is an underdog to Bournemouth, and I know they're on the road and Bournemouth's been good, like, just throw all that context out the window. But also United's coming off an impressive result, all things considered, against Liverpool, just by the result.
Results.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the only thing they care about these days.
Yeah, exactly. The draw here is plus 280. This is maybe my favorite line of the entire season. That said, I think it's you're betting how many goals is Bournemouth going to score, and can United keep up with Bournemouth? Can Manchester United find a way to keep up with Bournemouth here, Anthony?
Yeah,
Okay.
I kind of think so. I mean,
You get to bet the 3-3 exact score?
3-3 exact. Yeah, I agree with BJ's bet, so I won't step on it. But I will talk about United. It was so much fun betting them. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it because the first half of that match, like Liverpool came out a little differently. They didn't go like heavy metal, balls to the wall, press like the first match. They kind of were a little more reserved. And United was they had nothing. They had one set piece that almost led to a chance. That was about all they had in the first half. But it always felt like, and I made this joke in our Discord, it always felt like the minute Liverpool tried to up the ante a little bit and press, that there were holes were going to open up. And obviously the goal happens on a fluke, but right after that, Liverpool had to turn up the ante, and that's when you saw United start to get chances at the other end. So I'm a believer in this United attack right now. And I think they're always been a talented group. They were inefficient at turning high turnovers into chances in the first half of the season. Højlund, I'm still pretty skeptical of, I'm going to be honest. But Garnacho, Rashford, Mainu, and Fernandez is something, whatever it is, that I like. But the problem is you just can't get past this defense. And that's the part that sucks about betting United, which is, hey, like, you give up 4 XG to Liverpool. A Liverpool team that did not go a Liverpool team that I just said, like, didn't even really have to go all in to press to create all those chances. They were pretty subdued relative to the average Liverpool performance in the first half, especially. They still got to 15 shots and 1.8 XG. They are now the worst defense in the Prem in the last 2 months. I mentioned the stat earlier, there are 4 teams who were giving up at least 2 XG every match since January 30th. It's Luton Town, Sheffield United, Aston Villa, and Manchester United. 2.24, the worst of the 4. So, again, it's the 20 shots a game off the bus joke. It's the reality. And I don't really think there's a solve because Casemiro is pretty cooked, and it's pretty evident when you watch them. But then they sub in McTominay, and honestly, at this point, they should just play McTominay because at least he gets forward and gets goals and is good on set pieces and is like pretty good in those elements. Casemiro isn't giving them anything right now. So, maybe they can finally get Mount to full fitness because I think he would probably be the best at that role next to Mainu. But yeah, the defensive situation, now they're going to have more of the possession. Does Bournemouth try to press Kamwala into more mistakes if he's not able to go? Because he had a pretty good debut, and I thought he did some nice things defending without the ball in the penalty area, but I think it's a different animal when they ask you to be a ball-playing center back in a United build-up against a team that's going to press and you have to play a different role. That's where usually you start to see the flaws in certain guys and why they don't end up on like Man City and Liverpool is because they're not as good with the ball at their feet. That could be a problem. Maguire is not really good in build-up either, and so if that's the center back pairing again with Dalot and Wan-Bissaka, there's no build-up there. It's just going to be Mainu trying to like weave his way through the entire Bournemouth defense. So, yeah, I agree with BJ.
Yeah, Bournemouth team total of 4.5 minus 120. One of my favorite bets this season. So, yeah, Anthony hit the nail on the head at the end there, where the previous meeting they were kind of in the same scenario, right, where they were dealing with a lot of injuries. They were trying to build out of the back occasionally because they were at home, they were at Old Trafford, and with how Bournemouth presses with their hybrid press, it can be manipulated. And there are easy outlet balls when they like to push you to one side of the pitch. And United kept trying to do that, but they kept turning it over, right? So, and what's funny, you mentioned McTominay, because the first Bournemouth goal was because of they left McTominay free, and he got pressed, he lost the ball, and it led to an easy chance for Bournemouth. So, the other aspect is, okay, so what if United just says, we're just going to send the ball along? Like, we're not going to try to build up or whatever it is. Well, they've been very average at winning second balls this season. Even defensively, they've been really bad at defending long balls, allowing the 5th highest long ball completion percentage in the Premier League. So if they want to get into a back and forth long ball type of game with Bournemouth,
they don't have the guys to be able to do that. And as much as we've seen, I mean, Ten Hag's not going to change, right? Like if they were playing Liverpool or City or Arsenal, yes, they would probably sit in some type of low defensive block. They're not going to do that against Bournemouth, right? They're going to try to press them high. And Bournemouth is a team that is very versatile tactically when they have the ball. They like to use a lot of their stuff out of possession to create chances in possession. But when they're going from a goal kick situation, sometimes they'll send it long, sometimes they'll blow it out of the back. But they're kind of similar to a team like Brentford, right, who just absolutely throttled United and created over 3 expected goals against them. Well, Brentford just did some simple outlet balls when United tried to press them high. Bournemouth can do the exact same thing, and they can do it over and over and over again. And again, because United keeps getting results, Ten Hag's not changing what he's doing. Like because of all their injuries, this is kind of what they are and what they have to do. You mentioned some stats, Anthony. I've got a couple since the beginning of February. United is conceding over 23 shots per match since the beginning of February. They are conceding 2.4 expected goals since the beginning of February. Only Luton Town is worse than that. So because of United's inability, not only to hit home with their press, but also to defend long balls and teams in space, I mean, who's to say Bournemouth doesn't have 20 shots in this match, right? Like, even if they don't hold the majority of the possession, like, who's to say that Bournemouth can't do exactly what they did to United Old Trafford when they punished them 3-0 with 2 goals off a high turnover and 1 off of a set piece, right? Like, Bournemouth is good at set pieces as well. So, yeah, I predicted Bournemouth for 2.1 goals here. I don't really see a scenario how, they don't at least create 2 expected goals at home here against United.
Yeah, I mean, no team in the Prem has allowed more shots from set pieces this year than Man United.
Yep.
So,
open play, set pieces, doesn't matter. They just give up shots.
Okay, West Ham and Fulham. Now, West Ham plus 130, Fulham plus 190 on the road. Draw plus 260.
pass.
Yep, pass.
Pass.
Anything for you, BJ?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, West Ham's in a very weird spot.
yeah.
They have no incentive to play all their main guys.
Bowen's probably going to miss this match as well. So that means Antonio's going to be up top. Maybe a look for Fulham, dare I say, even though their road form has been terrible. Maybe Munoz anytime goal scorer. How about that? Just keep.
Yeah, I mean, they like I said though, West Ham probably doesn't play Kudus or Paqueta a ton of minutes.
Right, but for a team that can't defend, transition, low block, whatever it is, against maybe the hottest striker in the world right now. I don't know what he is to be anytime goal scorer, but he's generally a decent plus number. He'd be worth a look.
And finally, game of the week, Chelsea and Everton, Monday Night Football. Anthony, I don't know if you recall this because we're trying to block out the last podcast we did in which we kept saying unders, first leg unders in the Champions League, only to watch goals get scored seemingly every 6 minutes.
I would bet City under again, even though it ended 3-3.
And
I would.
Yeah, okay.
It was a Golazo
the other one,
fest.
I mean, I didn't bet on
it's a Golazo fest of who can score the craziest goals.
I mean, we'll talk about this more on Sunday, but when we talk about the second legs, but sometimes the shots from 25 yards go in. That's part of the game. It's a high variance sport. Less than 2 XG total.
Anyways, I don't know if you remember this, but I said right before we were done recording, I'm expecting to wake up on Monday morning with another points deduction for Everton. And
Only
what happened?
2, though. Only 2.
Only 2. I know, but a third one might come. This season
this is great. Again?
No, I think it'll be. It's something to do with the stadium.
Everton's going to start with -2 next year.
Yeah.
In the championship.
No, they're not, Anthony.
Chelsea is -4
here.
Yeah. I don't even know where I am here. But yeah, so another points deduction for Everton. Only 2 points. Only 2. But that puts them right back into the thick of the relegation race.
When you finally win.
You get your first win since December 16th, and it turns into a draw. I saw a great line where someone said Burnley 90 plus 2 days, 1-1, which is essentially what happened. So they're back on 27 points. So hey, let's just explain this relegation race as best we can. Like I said, Sheffield's on 6. Sheffield United's on 16 points. They're basically done. Burnley looks cooked now on 19. Luton Town's on 25, still alive. And then you have Forest also on 25, but ahead on goal difference. Of course, they've also had a point deduction as well.
They could get points back.
Yeah, and they could get points back, which
or they could lose more points.
This is further complicating stuff. And then Everton 27, Brentford 29, Palace. You can throw them in here too. They are on 30. Everton needs to continue to pick up results. They got their first win since December 16th over Burnley on I thought a decent performance, pretty stodgy match, but they get the lucky break on the goal. And here they go to Chelsea to take on the Blues. Chelsea's minus 150 at home. Everton is plus 400, and the draw is 3-1 in this one. BJ, you and I are once again on the same side here. Let's keep doing it, baby.
Yeah. Maybe would you say Chelsea's offensive performance against Sheffield was maybe one of the most alarming that we've seen this Premier League season? 6 shots and 0.2 XG against what might go down as historically one of the worst Premier League defenses that we've ever seen. Like, think about how crazy that is. And if you think about how Chelsea, and we've said this many times, but where Chelsea is good when they are in possession is playing in transition. Teams that will press them high, leave space for all of their runners to go in behind. When they play teams that, and you can go look through all their results, like if you zero in on the teams that they've played who have played low blocks against them and not pressed them and not done anything, they generally have struggled. There really hasn't been a match where they've created over 2 XG against a team that plays a low block against them. Everton's very different. They play Deitch. I love Deitch so much because he's one of the few managers that plays what we call plays a high block now, where the reason they get all these high turnovers and everything is not generally because they're pressing high, but because they play so far up the pitch and generally are passive so far up the pitch that they're able to turn teams over because teams have really struggled to play through them. So this is a situation where Everton, who we know has been undervalued for a very long time, still top 5 in non-penalty XG allowed, still second in big scoring chances allowed, but they also have the 3rd most ball recoveries, which is an indication of how hard you work when you're out of possession. How good are you winning second balls? How good are you winning duels in the middle of the pitch? Everton are elite in that aspect, and Chelsea really are not. And if you think about, how does Chelsea score here? Well, it's probably going to be some, hilarious thing to add to the Everton highlight reel for the season. But they got to find somebody that can play in between the lines or somebody that can exploit the space in the middle, or they're going to have to play out wide. Cole Palmer is really the only guy that Chelsea has that can play that role in the middle of the pitch, finding that space in between lines. And if that's the only guy that can do that, and he's also your number 1 goal-scoring threat right now, it's a very difficult situation of how Chelsea actually breaks Everton down consistently over the entirety of the match. Even in the previous meeting, Everton beat them 2-0. Chelsea had 16 shots and just 0.9 XG, didn't register 1 shot with an XG rating over 0.15. So this is a really good matchup here for Everton out of possession. And we also know Chelsea has struggled defending in transition. So that's obviously where Everton is at their best. So I like Everton plus a half here, plus 120. I only projected Chelsea around even money. So I think there's value in Everton again.
I will have a full preview of this match on Sunday in the Action Network app. Really excited to dive into it. I echo BJ's sentiments about Everton's defense being well suited to slow down Chelsea. This market was minus 180 on Chelsea. It has come down. I'm going to hope to get a better number, but I'm back. Everton plus 1 here. If we can get a better number, I'm going to hop in.
Yeah, Everton money line. I'll go into it a little later. Okay, that wraps up the Premier League. Bundesliga time. Anthony, you're the only one with a bet in Germany.
Yeah, classic spot here. Leverkusen under 3.5 against Werder Bremen, minus 130. Leverkusen probably going to rotate through its key attackers. The Bundesliga is over. The gap continues to grow, and we have seen, we saw a couple weeks ago, Leverkusen rested their first team in the Europa League, but now against West Ham, I do expect all the main guys to play, get the weekend off, and then play again Thursday, especially in the first half. So this total is just inflated, and I expect it to close a lot lower once they announce that the lineup, and then none of the main Leverkusen goal scorers are playing in it, like Wirtz and Frimpong, especially the fullback and their best creator in the middle. I do expect to sit. Maybe even Grimaldo too.
Okay, on to Spain, La Liga. BJ, anything here?
Bilbao, minus 140 at home against Villarreal, the Copa del Rey champions. Athletic Bilbao.
God bless you.
Generally a great matchup here for them because Villarreal has been the worst transition defense in Spain this year. They've obviously played a little more aggressive, but Bilbao is one of the better transition teams, not only in Spain but really in Europe because of how they are able to break out of their mid block, force high turnovers, and that's what they did in the previous meeting. I mean, they went up 3-0 in the blink of an eye. And yes, if you look at over the totality of the match, the XG was pretty close, and Villarreal ended up scoring twice, and it ended up being 3-2. But out of the gates, I mean, Bilbao is just punishing them time and time again in transition. So this is another great matchup for them, and honestly, a very low price when you look at how much better their underlying numbers have been compared to Villarreal this season.
Anthony, anything in Spain?
I got two, and I'm going to play against these markets that are deflating the hell out of these two teams in Europe. Look, I get that there could be some rotation for Barca and for Atleti because they're playing in the Champions League on Wednesday and they have to turn around for a Sunday or for a Saturday La Liga match. But I mean, Atleti's been better than Girona this year. They're only plus 110 at home. Kind of crazy to me. And then Barca's minus 115 at Cadiz. This is a classic relegation spot where the awful team who's been very clearly one of the three worst teams in Spain all year is only minus 115 to get a result against Barcelona, who even if they rotate Lamine Yamal has enough depth. And the interesting thing about Barca is that they're actually in a spot where they're getting guys back from injury. And so they may play them like a half. That's enough. That's all I need. So I'm expecting a half for a lot of their best players. And I think as a result of that, that's enough to separate from a Cadiz team. I have this line -1, and they're only minus 115. So I'm happy to lay it. You could take off 3 or 4% for the fact that the spot sucks, but you're still not going to get all the way to Barca only being this small of a road favorite.
And then in Italy, right back to you, Anthony.
Napoli minus 1.5. Finally, this team is starting to figure out how to run better, closer to its expected goals numbers. They get Frosinone at home. Napoli scoring outburst against Monza, but really at home. I have this game closer to 2, and I know that Napoli, that Serie A has been a really low-scoring environment this year. That is not true for Frosinone, who's given up 61 goals, the second most in La Liga, second only to BJ Salernitana. So, they can actually score. They have a pretty functioning attack, but against this Napoli defense, which grades out as elite, they're not going to get a ton on offensively. They're still going to leak goals the other end. I think Napoli gets separation and runs this up.
BJ, what do you have in Italy?
Turin derby this weekend. Torino Juventus, both teams to score no at minus 140. Two of the, with Serie A being lower event, these are probably the two lowest event teams in Serie A this season. They're both kind of out of the same mold. Torino's more of a mid-block team as opposed to Juventus being a low block. I still can't get over the fact, but they are really good, that Allegri is just letting people into his final third. Juventus has one of the most final third touches of anybody in Serie A, but are so good at defending their penalty area. And for a Torino team that's not very good offensively, yes, they have some pieces that can maybe give Juventus a little bit of trouble. But, I mean, this has, you like the 0-0, Michael. I mean, this has 0-0 written all over it. So both teams score no at minus 140, projected to closer to minus 190 for two teams that are allowing under 0.8 non-penalty XG per 90 this season.
The funny thing about just kind of Juve is that they're up 1-0 against Fiorentina and the fans are whistling and booing because they're not really trying to attack.
No.
I mean, his job is in deep shit because they are not good enough to overcome the fact that they play an awful brand of football for a team who's supposed to be one of the best in Italy. I mean, Mourinho did it as a bit for a while when he was at Tottenham, and he's notorious for his defensive thing. But peak Mourinho teams didn't even do this. They would still when they played really bad teams, they were not parking the bus up a goal every match, which is what they're doing right now. And it's just it's awful to watch. I mean, and even when they're not really in danger of conceding, you're giving teams ball in your penalty area down, up a goal with 8 minutes left. You're playing Fiorentina and you're hanging on for dear life. It's not a fun life, and it's not fun for fans of a team who are used to seeing them, play fun attacking football, and they're watching Inter run up scores on teams. It's pretty funny to see Juve and just how poorly run they are, and Allegri I don't know. They have good attackers. Like Vlahovic is a good Serie A striker, and Chiesa's fine.
Remember Chiesa when he lit the world on fire 2 years ago, and now he's just playing in this low block centric system. I did see, who knows if it's true or who knows if it comes to fruition, but Mata over at Bologna, it sounds like he's agreed to personal terms with Juventus. So we'll see. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But Bologna might be playing in the Champions League, or they probably will actually, because Italy getting a 5th spot. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this Juventus team is so old school in such a funny way.
All right. Before we get to the underdogs, BJ, you have a play in legal.
I do. I like Brest against Leon. And you know what, Michael? I'm going to save it for the underdog section coming up next.
All right. Well, let's do it. I have a feeling you're going to be talking about Stade de Brest as your favorite underdog in our
second place in Ligue 1. And you know what? As somebody who bet them to be relegated this season, I was dead wrong. And they're really good. And, it's not because of some, like, for example, like a team like Bologna who has like this tactical revolution and all the tacticos, look at it. Like, they're just doing very simple things better than everybody else. They're winning second balls. They're winning duels in the middle of the pitch. They're winning aerial duels at a really high number, and they're pressing high very effectively. One of the stats that I was going through them and it really caught my eye is, they're holding the fifth highest average possession in Ligue 1, but have the 3rd most ball recoveries. Like, that tells you how hard they work out of possession and how good they are at winning all of those loose balls. They're taking on a Leon team that has had a little bit of a resurgence. Obviously, they started the season in the relegation zone, and they've come back up. But since the turn of the calendar in 2024, Brest has the best expected goal differential in France at plus 8.2, while Leon over that same time frame is only plus 3.4. So I think that Brest is generally really undervalued here on the road at Leon. I mean, if you go through all the results, they basically, by XG, they've only been blown out 3 times. It's been at Marseille, at PSG, and at Lille, which is the 3 best teams in France. So I really like Brest here on the road, plus 245.
All right. I think it's been a few weeks since I've highlighted Everton in here, so I'm allowed to go back. I'll take on Chelsea with Everton. Everton right now is plus 400. They're my favorite underdog of the week. I think that there's something to be said about the way Chelsea approaches certain matches right now. They're kind of on the beach. The season's over. Draw against Burnley, a draw against Sheffield United in a very, very, very concerning performance from in terms of going forward. Yeah, they had a great showing against Manchester United, but you can easily get up for that one. They're home to Newcastle United, another one that you can get up for. Before that, it was a draw against Brentford. It seems like they are picking and choosing when they show up. Everton, of course, don't have that luxury with another points deduction coming here. They're going to need to be on the front foot a little bit more than you'd imagine in this kind of matchup. But I think that bodes well against a Chelsea team that they should be able to bully in the middle of the field. And I think that we could see maybe a little bit of that run that we've been waiting for from Everton, like we saw in October. Perhaps it's started last week against Burnley, and now that they've got the monkey off their back in terms of ending the Schneid, we see an upset here at Stamford Bridge on Monday Night Football, 4-1 on the Toffees, Anthony.
7th time we've used Everton. We're 1-5. We did have a plus 250 win in there, which ironically I won. So you guys are still winless backing Everton in the parlay specifically. So I'm going to go with Union Berlin plus 250 at Augsburg. Not anything fancy about this matchup, but Augsburg is going to give you a ton of space to play a back and forth counterattacking match. The defensive numbers have taken a real slide back down to what we saw the last couple of years. They've regressed. They had this, kind of moment in the sun in the first half of the season. We were like, oh, Augsburg might be intriguing. No, not really. Still a bottom 3rd team in Germany, and really have Union rated slightly better. So plus 250 on the road, Union Berlin in the Bundesliga.
That comes in just over 59-1, that parlay. So feels like a good one. Feels like we're finally going to get the 3-legger for the first time this season.
Feels like everything coming down to Everton is just the position we
want to be on Monday, right, Monday night under the lights. Perfect.
Yeah. Brentford and United blew second half leads for us last week. So not that United deserved to be ahead, but
still. We're sniffing around the edges. We're getting close. Okay, best bets now for the upcoming Premier League match week. BJ, you can go first. All right, that brings us to the end of the show. Our favorite bets for the upcoming Premier League match week. Should be a fun one. BJ, what is your favorite bet in the EPL?
Bournemouth, team total over 1.5 at -120 against Manchester United. This Manchester United defense is a relegation fodder defense, and how they set up tactically actually favors Bournemouth really well. You know, if you want a mirror image of what this match is somewhat going to look like in terms of what Bournemouth can be in possession, go look at the Brentford match that Manchester United played, where they gave up over 30 shots and over 3 expected goals. Because if you want to press your front line and not have your fullbacks aid in the press, well, it's going to leave a ton of space out wide, which will allow Bournemouth to have play their usual long balls out there and run at this United back line. Since the beginning of February, United is allowing 23.3 shots per 90 minutes and 2.45 expected goals. So Bournemouth, who is a team that is very, very good playing whether in possession or in transition, is going to have many opportunities to score here. So I like them over 1.5 goals at -120.
Okay. Bournemouth team total over for you. I'm going to go with Crystal Palace on the first half money line. A 7-1 shot here is my favorite bet. The Liverpool trend has been there all season with the way that they start matches. They were very, very lucky not to be down early against Sheffield United in the first minute of that game. That was and also at home. So it's not like this is something that just happens on the road. If you look at their splits over the first half on the season, they've gone to the break down 5 times. They've been drawn 15 times. So that means it's more often than not that they are losing or drawn. And I think that this Crystal Palace team should be set up to give them some trouble, at least out of the gates. So I think it's 7-1. I'm happy to bet into this trend. I do think it's a thing. We've seen it from these Klopp teams in the past as well, especially in like these high stakes environments. We'll never forget that crazy Wolves, Liverpool, City Villa day from a couple years ago. So I do think that at 7-1, you're getting some decent value to shorten the game against Liverpool here. Anthony, what do you got?
I'm going to go with Brighton, Burnley, under 3, -115. We've seen time and time again that this Brighton attack has taken a real tumble in the second half of the season. I think the market is still adjusting for it. And also that Burnley is not as aggressive in both keeping possession and pressing others out of possession. They're playing much more traditionally like a bottom half team. And as a result, this total is about a quarter goal too high. So under 3 for me at -115 is my favorite bet of the weekend in the Prem.
All right, there you have it. Another week of Wondergoal in the books. We'll be back on Sunday evening to record for the second legs of the Champions League quarterfinals. So look for that in your feed overnight Sunday into Monday morning. But until then, best of luck with all your bets in the Premier League this weekend. For Anthony and BJ, I'm Michael. Thank you to our sponsors, Bet365, and our producer, Noah, for all the hard work on the back end.